approval of minutes.
Next item, please.
Approval of minutes. Approval of minutes of the following Dearborn Board of Education meeting, Policy Committee meeting, April 10th, 2018, Executive Session, Closed Evaluation, April 10th, 2018, Finance Committee meeting, April 10th, 2018, Regular P12 meeting, April 10th, 2018. Make any necessary corrections and move approval of these minutes.
So moved.
Support.
We have motion has been moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting these minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous, 4-0 vote. Next item, please.
Special reports, ACE program. Dr. Yusuf Masalam, Dr. Winifred Green.
Good evening, President Mead, Board Trustees, Dr. Maleko. So our presentation this evening is in reference to the ACE philosophy, the Academic Center for Excellence, and a discussion on the purpose of reallocating and relocating resources of the ACE philosophy to the 3 comprehensive high schools. With me, I have Dr. Green, principal of the Heights campus, all the programs. Principal Scott Casewell at Ford, Principal Hayama Kadri, Fortson High School, and Principal Adam Martin, Dearborn High. This has been a discussion for the last almost 2 years as we've been evaluating and looking at the ACE program and identifying how we can enhance and increase the number of students that we are supporting and how we can take the philosophy and implement it in the comprehensive high schools so that the students have less transitions. So, basically, our focus is we want to increase the number of students. Currently, 2017-2018, the ACE middle school has 46 students. If we move the ACE philosophy to the comprehensive high schools and as part of the 9th grade academy model, then the enrollment will move up to a minimum of 75 students. I know Fortson High School, and I know each school at the end is going to briefly just discuss some of the things that they're going to be doing with the ACE philosophy. Because the idea is that each comprehensive high school will have 20 to 25 students identified, and I do know, for example, at Fortson High School, they're going to identify more than 25 students to support through the ACE philosophy. Moreover, the goal is also to have a smoother transition for these students. Instead of the students having 3 transitions by the time they are fully implemented in the comprehensive high school, it'll be 1 transition. That 1 transition will be from the middle school into the high school, but in with the 9th grade academy concept and the philosophy behind the support of the affective education. Therefore, the philosophy of the ACE will move over with them to the comprehensive high school. How it will look. The ACE students, and these students will have 4 core classes: English, social studies, math, science, and they will have 2 electives, of which 1 elective will be PE, which is very common for 95+% of our freshmen. And the other elective will be an enrichment study skills class that will focus around the ACE philosophy style of the Academic Center for Excellence. And it'll focus on community service, authentic projects that will enrich their education to support them through these community service projects. Also, it'll support them with study skills, help them with additional counseling, additional mentoring. And again, as stated earlier, it'll be identifying between 20 to 25 students per comprehensive high school. But again, there will be additional students identified in some schools. To support this, we'd like to move 1 FTE per each comprehensive high school from the Academic Center of Excellence. So each comprehensive high school will get an additional FTE, and that FTE's focus, they will co-teach with these students in math, and they will co-teach in language arts. Moreover, There will be pull-out as needed. So you go in, you co-teach, you do small group instruction, and if they need any additional support, they get additional support. Moreover, this additional FTE will support that enrichment class. They will teach that enrichment class, and that enrichment class will be focused around affective education, study skills, community service, small group projects, as well as out in the community activities and or field trips. Very similar, almost exactly like what they're doing at the academic excellence. Moreover, they'll also get, and it's probably in a later slide, but additional support through counseling, mentorship, and also restorative practices. And I actually should say restorative circles, not practices, because the restorative circles focus on the affective in the beginning, the preliminary. The ACE support teacher, continued, again, community service, study skills, restorative practices, and the PBIS, the positive behavior support, and project-based learning. So that affective component will be part of that enrichment class. These students also will be a cohort. They will go from each class together so that the enrichment teacher will be following them and supporting them. So they'll always have two teachers in the classroom with them, except in science and social studies, wherein the enrichment teacher will have that flex time to be able to go in where they need to go in. We have students will be able to set goals for the purpose of education. They'll establish their EDPs, their education development plans. They'll develop their own personal responsibility and or sense of their own value in terms of identifying where they want to go, what they want to do in reference to career and technical education, as well as to the teacher advisor programs. Be able to demonstrate clearly the standards of high quality work, and they will receive adequate support to achieve these standards. So with that additional teacher who is working with them on a regular basis, that will be able to support those students more one-on-one. And also with the community service and the project-based learning, it'll support them in the curricular content to identify the skill sets and how it all comes together. We're also going to support from a district and special populations perspective, again, restorative practices and circles, social work support in the classrooms. And one thing that about our district, as you know, our social workers don't just work with students who are struggling, but they work with all students, building that peer-to-peer mentorship, that identification process for students to build that empathy and to support one another. Continue with professional development on PTSD, post-traumatic stress development, PD time and teacher planning, and we will also support by linking adult mentors in the school. So I asked the high school principals, and Dr. Green is, all three comprehensive high school principals, and Dr. Green is principal of the Heights campus, to be here to briefly say a couple words about how they're going to support the ACE philosophy in their comprehensive high schools. And again, we've been discussing this and working on this for over a year and a half now to identify and ensure that whatever process we put in place, we're able to touch upon more students and support more students through this process. So Mr. Casebolt, or actually, Adam, did you want to start? Or Scott? Whoever would like to start.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Some of the highlights for Esalen probably be repeated. I'm repeating some of Dr. Masalam's point as far as the 1.0 FTE, the ACE teacher that will provide core in-class support through the co-teaching model. We will also incorporate and continue the ACE philosophy in the ACE elective at Etzel. Title I funding is not an option for us as far as extra staffing, but I'm confident that the ACE students will receive support from Mr. Khalid Abdullah, our 9th grade assistant principal, Craig Kiefer, our 9th grade counselor, Tara Haddad, our 9th grade lead teacher and in charge of Link Crew, Mr. Abe Baez for Community and Schools, who supports the 9th grade, Stephanie Salisbury, who is our SET restorative practices person, and Mr. Khalil Duklala, who is our student-parent liaison. We are also considering making the ACE teachers a school committee because one day a month is set aside for some additional time for them to meet exclusively and talk about the kids on in their classes and how they can best support them to be successful. Thank you.
Good evening. We actually did a pilot this year at Fortson High School, and 4 of our 5 teams, we had an ACE class. Each class had about 12 to 15 students, and pretty much what Dr. Masalam described is what we were doing at Fortson. And our data will be coming in shortly, but we think it's been very positive for those students, as well as the mainstream classes. They've all benefited from us doing it.
Good evening, all. As Scott and Heon both said, I look at this as an opportunity to reach more students and support more students within the classroom. And the one big piece, too, is aligning teachers that can work on a team to support those 20 to 25 students. So anytime you have additional resources that can possibly come to the building and enhance what we already offer, I'm a big supporter of it and look forward to having that ACE program back at Dearborn High.
As Dr. Masalam said, this discussion has gone on for approximately a year and a half. So as we're working through our staffing, we're trying to make this a smooth transition. The principals have been very cooperative in this process. And, find an appropriate placement for that one FTE, Dr. Masalam said, for each of the staff members that will be leaving us going to the comprehensive high schools. So we expect this to continue to be a smooth transition as we move forward.
Trustee Petlicoff.
I know that we heard good feedback with the program at the Michael Berry Career Center. We're not going to be able to exactly replicate, I'm assuming, the same kind of setup that's at the Michael Berry Career Center with these students going into a larger high school setting. Do we feel that that could complicate their success? Or is that not the biggest component of what, taking them out of that arena of, student competition and distraction with more students by placing them in the Michael Berry Career Center? It was my understanding from a couple of the staff who were teaching the ACE program that they felt that that was one of the things that helped them focus and succeed. Are we going to be able to still provide that kind of environment for them in the larger setting?
And that is, and please feel free to jump in anytime. That was one of our major discussion points. That was one of our hurdles that we had to ensure of. What we did was when we looked at the way currently ACE is set up with, you have a classroom of 5 to 6 students in it, and you have them in that smaller environment. That is something that we will not be able to replicate. But what we did identify is that there are several more students that could be in that program, and that we really believe that we wanted to expand what we were doing for the current students for so many more, because when we were having, 6 students from the Dearborn High freshman class of 450 freshmen, where in turn we can identify at least another 20 of whom could be supported through this philosophy. What we realized was that it wasn't just the school setting that was helping. That was a part of it. It was a part of the whole dynamic. It was that closeness these students had, that additional staff they had, the affective education piece. It wasn't our traditional, you go to your 6 classes and you move on. It was more of, these students had one extra, voice supporting them and putting forward those community service activities. So with all of the components of the ACE philosophy, we felt that that would help us take a larger group of students to the next level. So will we be able to replicate a classroom of 6 to 8? No, we won't be able to do that, and it will be in a larger setting. The other thing that we found too was the students were going through 3 transitions before they got into the comprehensive high school, where with this, it's one transition. And that one transition will be with a group of teachers that are going to focus on their performance and their support.
So then are we prepared with as we move forward and attempt to do this on a larger scale, to then see how successful we are as we move them into the mainstream population at some point and follow them through? Because I would like to have that data where I know where they end up. Yeah. At the end of their high school career.
So I did it for this school year in 4 teams. So there was 4 teams of ACE students. We had about 60, 70 altogether. We are tracking the data, so I can share it once we're done, but it appears that the students have done much better. Okay, we were able to give them the support that Dr. Masalam talked about. Even though they were at our high school, it was still a small learning community for them. The teachers in each team met quite often to talk about the successes and how they can improve what they're doing in the classrooms with these students.
I'm curious about the cohort.
Yes.
So these students will be in the same group all the way through their education?
No, just their freshman year,
Okay, just for the freshmen.
their freshman year.
So what happens in the sophomore year?
So in their freshman year, they're in this cohort so they can get that additional support. Their sophomore year, they will move more into a regular non-cohort status.
Okay. This is an intensive program.
Yeah, the goal is that freshman year, as the research shows, is that ninth grade year is very crucial.
Build their skills.
Yeah, build their skills. And then also with the EDP plan and looking at the CTE and working, with the dual enrollment and all the other things we have happening, the goal too is when they develop their EDP plans, their sophomore year, some of these students could be at Michael Berry Center in the CTE programming. So,
Why do we call it a cohort then?
because it'll be 20 to 25 students that are together for the entire freshman year.
Well, okay.
So they're a small cohort within the whole freshman class.
Okay, thank you.
No, you're very welcome.
Trustee Thorpe?
So you mentioned that with the existing ACE teachers could be moving out to the regular high schools, the other high schools, but they're not going to be teaching all the subjects. These cohorts will still be going through with another teacher, and that one teacher will be able to focus their time on the students in the different subjects, making sure they're getting enough support.
Correct. Yes.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Next item, please.
NSBA Annual Conference Report. I don't know, do you all want to go up? I'll be the only one sitting here just about.
And yeah, because Dr. Mead, initially you were part of that group. So I just want to mention, we were able to go to the National School Board Conference, and it was something last year that we talked about actually we modified our meeting to Tuesday, if you recall, in April, so that we could have a team. And I know, Mr. Berry wasn't able to make it, but he was part of the we met last week to prepare this, so we're going to have Dr. Choko pick up some of his area. The first thing I'd say is that this is one of the most dynamic conferences I've ever been at. Now it's the second time I've gone. It is a huge conference. The resources are incredible. Board members, I know you get the automated emails, but when you get there and the feel, not only the networking, but just the information flow, it really is fantastic. And you can see here we're as a team. And so last year it was just two of us went, and what we realized is that most boards actually send a team. Usually a superintendent or other administrators and board members. And so that's what we're actually hoping to continue this, because it's just a real positive experience. So I'll ask Dr. Chokol to switch that over. Alignment with our strategic plan, our mission and our vision. I did forget to bring the sign on the plane. Otherwise, last time I did, but we were living the mission and vision when we were there, and the networking. So I've got the strategic plan correlation, and to be honest, I probably could have taken a huge chunk of the plan, but I'm just highlighting a few areas. And part of it is the sessions that we all went to, and what we did is we divided up. So we got the information by dividing up and then coming back and debriefing. And so I'll let Dr. Choko move on it. Professional learning communities is on their curriculum. We have assessment, community involvement, and then here's some just financial and otherwise. So we all went to a variety of different sessions, and then we collaborated after. I know we also have Lauren here from one of the groups. She was actually involved with the one of the vendors there for the food service program that we're going to be talking to moving forward. So just the keynotes. I think what they try to do is inspirational, and so we had Terry Bradshaw. He was, very positive, inspirational. He just basically, his message was love what you do, and he really gets into it when he's presenting, if you've ever seen him. We had Miss Compton, you know, a reporter who happened to be with George W. Bush, the reporter, when the 9/11 hit. So she told her story. And then we had Mr. Castro, who was the mayor of San Antonio. And just what you heard from all of them is appreciation from educators and teachers, and really to value teachers. It's fitting that we passed the contract, or hopefully, you know, we passed it with the DFT and the board's going to vote on it, and that we have Teacher Appreciation Week. But that's what we heard consistently from the main speakers. Some of the other things that I'm just going to mention here, you'll see some of the topics and we're going to get into. I'm not going to talk about them, but those are the things that we're going to get to as we go through the session, and they're all aligned with the strategic plan. Customer service, healthy foods, I mentioned, social media and apps, you know, getting into the technology within the plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Thorpe.
One of the sessions that I went to focused on the opioid crisis, and you'll hear about this in the news every single day. What they were advocating, and again, this is from one school district, but they want to make sure that people are using the resource officers that are in the different districts. But they want to make sure that those resource officers have been trained in de-escalation.
Good.
Again, they're police officers. They're used to being in high-intensity situations. They need to be able to bring it back down when they're with these students. So that's one part. It was surprising to hear from some of the medical professionals that were there to say that there's really no training in med school on how to manage pain. So a lot of doctors, you say that I've got a pain here or there, wherever. They'll say, all right, here's a prescription, go get it filled. And they are bombarded by all of these reps from different companies trying to get their products out. So they'll say, all right, I'll write you a prescription for this. Now they'll only write it for a limited amount of time because they know it's addictive. But then what you see happening is a lot of people will go doctor shopping, meaning either one doctor won't give the prescription, so they'll go to another one that will, or they've only got that limited amount of time, they'll go to the next doctor to get it renewed. And that's how they're able to start doing this. And studies are showing that the opioids are really no more effective than Tylenol or Motrin at relieving pain. But they don't want to tell you that because they're trying to sell their product. A lot of times it starts with things like dental work. So it's just normal people that are on these things for a little bit too long, and then they get hooked.
That's interesting.
So I also went to a session where they were talking about how you can get creative with the space that you've got in your room. And not just in a room, but really in the whole building. They talked about little things like when you're first walking into a building, do you see a sign that says, no cell phones, no talking in the halls, no this, no that? Try to get rid of the word no. Technology is fine if it's being used to create things and not being used just to consume things. We're already seeing this in different classrooms, but the classroom is not the way it used to be, where you would have the teacher in front, all the desks nicely lined up. Now the kids are going to work more collaboratively in different pods, so to speak. And they were showing different pictures of some classrooms that were incredibly cluttered because the teachers have been there for 30 or 40 years and they didn't want to throw anything out. And I think a lot of people get like that. Sure. So they were talking about all different ways that we could be able to reutilize a lot of the spaces that we've got.
So one of the other themes throughout the conference was the concept of career academies, CTE education, education with a purpose, the idea that not only do we want to deliver the Michigan Merit Curriculum here in Michigan, but we want to ensure that students are ready for that next step, whether it's college or whether it's a career. So this was Mr. Berry's slide, and he chose this because this is certainly an interest of his, but there were several sessions on this topic, and I think it's appropriate as we are beginning the academy concept here, starting at Fordson, relative to pathways and ensuring that students get hands-on practical experience so that they'll have a better idea of what it is they're heading into.
So Dr. Chokla and I actually attended this session with Dr. Reeves, and so Dr. Reeves is one of the individuals I follow. I've read many of his books. Michael Fulham would be another one, Bob Marzano, Richard Elmore. There's a few gurus. He's one of the gurus in the field, so we always try to go.
Is this the first time you met him?
No, I've met him before. Yeah, I've met him a few times, and he signed many of my books that I've read. But he's very data-oriented, and I just wanted to point out a few things. You know, he did talk about high school start times. I know we've had those discussions here, so maybe something in the infrastructure or long-term we want to look at. Again, you know, we understand some of the things that the hurdles that we'd have to go through to get through that. You know, one of the things that we are doing, you know, with eliminating zeros, 4-point scale, you know, for grading. You came up about extracurricular activities is huge, and I'm going to show some data in a second. But I also want to, yeah, actually, you can go to that slide, Jim, and then it actually shows how it is a positive for academic achievement of students. He's got data on a national level that shows, you know, involvement in the extracurricular activities. Another thing that I want to
wait a minute. You meant they do better if they're involved in student
involved,
activities.
and there's a certain number.
Yeah.
So if you look, they're actually averaging here. He actually has it listed as to how many and what their GPA is. So based on how many activities they're involved in.
Yeah. So we encourage students to get involved.
You know, so if we talk about connection with sports and other things, that would be one of the things that any extra, whether that be sports, music, other things, that is a huge positive that connects students.
Good.
Thank you, Jim. So the other thing on their nonfiction writing, that's huge. And actually, as you go through the schools, we're seeing that throughout the school district. That's a huge positive for growth and achievement. It's something that, you know, we look to or we've been promoting across the district. And then professional learning communities. That was part of what we were there together, you know, kind of as a team, but it's what we're doing throughout the district. You know, that is not a new term in Dearborn, but it's something we continue to work with the union groups. And it is part of we have a letter of agreement with the union on that, and we also have some things in the contract that we're trying to do in promoting that. So I think that's another positive. And then I do want to mention that he actually contacted us after the conference. And Dr. Chokal and I actually spent a little bit over an hour on a conference call with him.
Super.
And we have a second one coming up with Dr. Reeves. So this was a big thrill for us to kind of pick his brain one-on-one through these conference calls. And he's familiar with Dearborn schools. He had done some work under Dr. Artis' time in the district 2 superintendents ago. This one is where we were joking at the last meeting where Trustee Berry said, you know, let's not show Abe these pictures because he's going to want on that infrastructure committee. But this was the athletic facilities. Wow. But the point of this session, I went to the school visit Northside, and I want to mention it's connected to the data that I just mentioned from Dr. Reeves. What they talk about, and if you know, Texas being, football, or they're all into their athletics. But here's the thing: the message that I received from them, is that it's connecting the kids. They don't anticipate it's not about winning. Now, I will tell you, they still said they'd like to win. Sure. But really, it's about character building, and they actually take their students through different core value training. The coaches go through specific training. I've actually given that information to Mr. Mashur. It was very positive on how they connect. They're building, they want students to be contributing members of society after they graduate, and they connect it to the athletics. Even though I have these beautiful facilities, the point of that visit was really, and it was very inspirational.
Great.
So one of the on-site visits that was available was a visit to the Toyota plant. And looking at the focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the purpose of the visit was to have all of the people, and there was a whole busload of us that went, actually, get on a trolley, tour the assembly line, see what everyone is doing, talk about the requirements for their workers, talk about how they prepare them, train them, energize them, and also they added that it runs them about $30,000 an employee. And so to train them, to prepare them, to get them ready to be productive, in their plant. And so they want to keep people once they get them on, but they also had a very difficult time attracting candidates who were ready for all of this. So they connected up with an organization that runs off out of St. Philip's College, and it's called Alamo Academy. And the academy's job, again, is to prepare students for jobs not only at Toyota, certainly, but in other places. And the gentleman who directed the Alamo Academy said that essentially their contact at Toyota calls them up and said, okay, in 2 years, we're going to have 40 jobs in heavy machinery lifting. We are going to have 30 positions over here. And so they enroll students for certain courses of study, and they come from the San Antonio high schools over to Alamo Academy for part of their day and earn college credit, very much as we already do with Henry Ford College. So the Academy aligns very well with the academies of Dearborn concept that we're beginning to roll out. And so it was a very hands-on situation and visit.
One of the sessions that I attended was about closing the early reading gap, since we have the Read by Third Grade initiative. And so what they focused on was starting early before kindergarten, getting preschool programs. And once they're in kindergarten, having parent involvement. And so they would have monthly initiatives where the parents would come in, kind of do like an extra session with the students. That way the parents are involved in their students' learning. They would work in small group sizes, and so the study found that a 1-to-3 ratio, teacher to students, was the best, rather than a 1-to-10 or a one-on-one. And it's an all-hands-on-deck program. They have the principal, all the grade level teachers, and support personnel all getting the students to be ready to be reading at grade level by third grade.
Wow, great.
So I also heard a couple of different presentations on the balanced school calendar, also known as year-round schools. And so we know that with many of our schools being quite warm during the warmer months, that might not necessarily be an option for us right now as a district. But we heard from a district who's been doing it for 24 years. And they talked about how their graduation rate went from 56% all the way up to about 80 to 85%, and about the many positives that they got from farmers. This was a kind of a suburban rural district outside of Corpus Christi in Texas, and talked about, again, the positives relative to the continuous education that students received without, let's say, a 2-month gap. So this particular district ran, I think, 6 weeks on, 1 week off. They cited a calendar they'd also used, which was 8 weeks on, 2 weeks off, with 1 month off in the summer. So it was pretty interesting to see their achievement gains.
So the students don't forget as much.
Correct.
So just the other thing, social media, we're well aware of that here. We use it heavily, and that's something that there were some sessions on social media and just promoting that use of it and using it in a positive manner. As you know, that's what we do in Dearborn schools.
Yes, you do.
And then the other thing that we went to, and I know Trustee Nasser, you went to several of these, is just on different apps. So we want to look at the possibility of potentially, just looking at it right now, whether or not it's something we could do for different aspects in Dearborn schools with an app that everyone's now familiar with their phone. And so that, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I want to talk about the apps that we had. So there's one called Share 911, that what it is, it's an app that everybody in the school has. If there's an issue, there's somebody on, say, the football field that looks like they have a gun, or somebody that looks like they're going to do something in the schools. There's an app that one person who sees it, they report it, and automatically it gets sent out to everybody in the school. The school automatically then gets put on lockdown notice, and a response team from the police is notified, and they come out to the school. Another one was a bus tracking app, and so when you send your kids out to the bus stop in the morning, if there's a breakdown of the bus or the bus is delayed, you'd like to know. You don't want to send your kids out in the cold to where they're waiting out there for 5 or 10 minutes for the bus. So there's an alert system that lets you know an ETA of when your bus will be arriving, as well as when the students are coming home. If there's a delay, you get a 5-minute notification. It says the bus will know. It tracks it by GPS.
So just in closing, I just want to say that, you know, going to these things and these events on a national level, not just state, are very important. There's research on that, even from the Superintendent's Association, because it allows us to look at what's going on not only in Michigan or locally in Dearborn, but throughout. And we want to continue to advance. That's what we've been doing, and that's what Dearborn Schools has done. We want to balance it, too, with being fiscally responsible and taking advantage of all the local offerings, but we've also championed that. So I just want to mention it was a pleasure for me to go with the colleagues, and I would appreciate it, you know, encourage it in the future, not only for this but others. But the NSBA is definitely a dynamic organization and school board conference of information sharing. Questions, unless anybody else has anything.
Well, I'm awfully glad that you went to the conference. I think it's just essential for professional development, and it's really nice that board members go, and I think you did a really great job of filtering out and going to all the different sub-meetings and all of the networking that you do there. I think it's just horribly valuable. You come back with so many good ideas. So I just hope we can continue to do that year after year.
Thank you.
Thank you.